Welcome into the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com, back in the home studio after several days in Indianapolis. Happy to see you. Come on board. Spread the word. Brought to you by Edley's Barbecue, the best place to eat in and around Nashville. Happy to be home. Lots to talk about what took place in Indianapolis, who we got a feel for, some players caught my attention or that I have a better feel for. Know the Titans plan at tight end going forward. The logo, of course, full confirmation that it is the primary logo to be revealed officially soon. And their mark going forward, got the details about the points on the edges of the T, which seems to concern people. I'm going to take all your questions as we load up this room. So looking forward to that. Going to flip over to Twitter quickly here to make sure that it has put out a tweet, and it has. So that's good news. That thing seems to be back in order. Happy to see all of you. We'll be seeing some of the combine on TV this afternoon in a way that I hadn't before. So Robert, go forth, Titan fan, others, good to see you. We'll jump into some questions here. Am I surprised they cut Cushenberry? Couldn't get healthy, never played well enough for them. So not really. Though, I mean, the biggest reason not to cut Cushenberry is not to create another need for a team that is loaded with needs, but they don't have a big issue with that. So I think they'll be in play for Linderbaum, for Fortner, for McGovern, and for Biadasz, and would like to get one of those four guys in free agency here. Chig and Zeitler, Chig Okonkwo and Kevin Zeitler, so tight end and right guard of the Titans list of unrestricted free agents to be in a little over a week are the two guys that they've prioritized in trying to re-sign. It doesn't mean that they will get them, but that's who they want. I don't know that Chig is a good move. You know, I've got some numbers I wrote down just from looking at PFF. We know I don't like to rely on PFF numbers, but they do help compare, especially when you haven't seen a ton of the other people. So now Chig, you know, it's got popular to say the worst blocking tight end in the league. Not the worst blocking tight end in the league. He's the worst pass blocking, run blocking tight end in the league. So worst run blocking tight end in the league. Pass blocking, okay. So I think the other three guys, the three guys they would chase if they lost Chig, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, or Bellinger from the Giants, who obviously Brian Daboll knows from coaching him. So look, if they get Chig back, they're accepting the fact that he's not a good run blocker. They will try to make the most of his after the catch yak capabilities, which is something they're not loaded with. But if they don't retain Chig, I think they'll go a different direction and look more towards Y tight ends who are more inline tight ends, which is where they've struggled with that run blocking element, where Chig at PFF rated 29.7. Likely's a 66.5 last year. Kolar a 71.5, and Bellinger a 60.9. They would all be substantial upgrades at that inline run blocking tight end role. So you feel like, hey, we'll make the most of a guy we have who's got a good skill set. But if we can't retain him, we'll go a different direction with that skill set and look for a guy who's a lot better at what Chig Okonkwo is not good at, which is blocking near the line of scrimmage. So I think that's interesting that they would go that direction. What's up, Bloodwork? What's up, Ed Henry, Pat, Richard? Good to see all of you guys. Maybe Zeitler's issues, Richard said, were all related to Cushenberry. I think that's a stretch. I think Zeitler played better than we gave him credit for, and I think they like him as a settling force for J.C. Latham. And I think if you're choosing, which guy on the offensive line to dispose of, they clearly chose Cushenberry. I don't think they want to change out 40% of the offensive line, given all of the things they have to change on this team or replenish or plenish. They're not replenishing some of this stuff because there's nothing there to start with. So I think the Titans, Cushenberry was let go with an injury designation, not healthy. So they have to still now find a center. They don't want to also have to find a right guard. So I think they'll be going forward with more Skoronsky, new veteran center. Zeitler, if they can sign him. And we don't know if he wants to stay or if he'll get a better offer somewhere. And then Latham at right tackle, which, isn't a bad group, particularly. It was playing better at the end of the season. I can't say it was a bad group. It was a pretty bad group. But Brisillo, new offense, some cohesiveness, 4/5 of it, 80% of it will be better. So Sadiq is not in play at 4 by any means. If you're going off the beaten path at 4 or non-premium position, it would be Jeremiah Love. It would not be a tight end. I adjusted the microphone there, so hopefully that's a little better. Some of you talking about sound. Is that better? Can we say, Ed Henry asks, this trade is a win even if Johnson ends up not being extended? Well, I guess that ends up with what Sweat winds up being. But look, they were down on Sweat, the new regime, even before. So the new front office regime was down on Sweat. We heard rumblings when they moved on from Jarvis Brownlee that they also had cultural concerns with Sweat. And I think, it's obvious what those cultural concerns are. What kind of work ethic does the guy have? Can he keep his weight on track? And what's his dedication level? I don't know that he answered a lot of those questions before the Callahan/McCoy regime was done with its work. They said the right things about keeping the guy in place and giving the new regime a chance to evaluate him. Then it was Bradley who actually had the first chance to talk about him, who said everybody gets a fresh start here with no preconceived notions. Then Saleh, I think, knowing that they were shopping him already, or surely knowing that they were going to offer him in this Jermaine Johnson deal, overstated. He can move well laterally, get numbers to numbers, do what we ask, and within 48 hours he was dealt. Johnson is an intriguing and first-round pick, played well for a while for Saleh, got hurt after Saleh was gone. Last year was his first year back from an Achilles. We know how serious that is. We're looking at it with Cushenberry. Coming into the last year of his deal, is going to be in a prove-it mode, loves Salah, loves White Cotton. So you would hope he plays well and puts them in a situation where they'd want to re-sign him. I said from the beginning, right here and in print and on reels, that I didn't think that Sweat would be back with this team this year because it doesn't fit their scheme. They don't play a nose tackle, and Sweat's body is not equipped for him to be a defensive tackle in this front. And so they quickly told us that is the case by moving him. And now, even if he goes on to be a good nose, well, these Titans aren't going to play a nose. I think that's a pretty good return for a guy I thought they were going to struggle to get much for. So I undervalued him league-wide. I think a lot of us did. And now I think, the sense I got is that they really want a wave of defensive linemen to be coming in there fresh. Think about Jim Washburn and like his equation that a guy, after 3 or 4 consecutive plays, his capacity diminishes and he's got to get out and get a rest and somebody's got to come replace him. And they want a wave of defensive linemen. So no, Johnson doesn't reduce the fact that they're going to go out and get somebody in free agency who plays end/edge. And it doesn't reduce their need for one in the draft where Reese and Bailey and Bain are seemingly the most valuable and prime targets at 4. Bloodworks calling me P. Dizzle, which I'm going to confess is the first time I have been called by that name. And Titan 1207, 1973. So he is born on December 7th, 1973. Not too far off my age. Says I did the best work at the combine. I appreciate that. CRA says Sweat's his neighbor there in Houston. But him not being willing to train with Jeff last offseason, coming off 3-14, and additionally not fitting the scheme, it just made sense. Look, that he didn't go train with Jeff is one thing. Like, you're not obligated to go train with a particular guy in a particular city that you're not necessarily interested in being in. That's fine. But what the training that you would have done with Sweat, with Simmons, you need to do on your own with somebody else. That's the thing. I mean, I could say, listen, I'm not interested in being in Dallas. I want to be in Houston or Nashville or wherever. That's fine. But then you got to bust your ass to, show up in the kind of shape you would have gotten in if you did work with Jeff in Dallas. That's the issue. Geez, I mean, fiddling with the papers is really loud. We're going to handle it. I think they'll absolutely go after John Franklin Myers. I expect he'll be here. What else do we want to talk about here? So I'm going to turn the page really quiet. Oh no. Donald Tate. I think I might be. Quiet papers. Got my phone. That sounds like an atomic bomb. Oh my God! I dropped this phone. And did you hear it? It was so loud. He had to end and saw his light reflected in the Springsteen poster, and the whole thing is coming up. Cardinal Tate showed he playing any system. That's one thing. So, I mean, he's going to fit anywhere. Really good against man, and he gets separation. He knows how to separate. That makes it, to me, an easy one for Cam Ward. back. Yeah. So I was saying that Carnell Tate gets open, gets separation. And if he can get separation, that's an easy button for Cam Ward, right? The guy's going to be open. He doesn't have to, be as precise, as worried. That's a big deal. And so, got to factor that in a little bit if you're going away from defensive line here, which it seems to me hard to do. Here's my Jeremiah Love take. If they think Jeremiah Love is a blue chip player and these other guys aren't, and I think, it seems to me there's a consensus league-wide that these defensive linemen are good and maybe great, but not necessarily all pro level, right? If the Titans judge Jeremiah Love to be all pro level guy, if they've got him graded as better than these other guys, they won't hesitate to take him. The question is, do they have him graded that level? I don't know if they do. And I don't know if CRA is asking if you trade back Love. How long does Love last there? This whole top 10 is really about the foundational positions versus some non-valued positions in the talent there, in particular Love and Downs. So you're generally not taking a running back super high. And the ones that we've seen go super high lately, Genty, it's too early to say. But if you look at what's happened in Atlanta, has he been a good player and now increasingly a great player? Yes. Are they winning in Atlanta with Bijan Robinson? They're not. Is it his fault? It's not, but they're not winning. Caleb Downs, is more Buda Baker than he is Kyle Hamilton. Is Buda Baker a great player? Yes. Is he in a terrible situation? Or was he in a terrible situation with the Cardinals? Yeah. So, there's so much context for this. It's hard to give hard answers. Is Caleb Downs a transformative player? I think maybe a transformative player on a really good defense. Is he going to come in and make you a really good defense? I don't know. I don't know. I do get a sense that the Titans are happy with their running back situation. Not that Jeremiah Love wouldn't transform it. I'm not expecting them to be active in free agency. I don't think. So we'll see. I like this idea here from Pat, that Jadarian Price later might be a better thing for the Titans. So we shall see. Shaker LT says, wondering how much of a learning curve would be involved in transitioning into a 4-3 style defense for the Titans going forward. Well, look, you come in and you learn the system every year. Even if it's the same system as last year's, it's installed and taught. And so the holdover guys are relearning the old system with some tweaks. These guys are going to come in and learn the new system. Well, a lot of these guys are going to be new. So Simmons is going to learn a new system. But how many guys? Jalen Harrell is going to learn a new system. But a lot of those guys on the front, Arden Key is going to be gone. Draymond Jones is gone. Who on the front are you concerned about learning? I don't get the sense they're going to re-sign Sebastian Joseph Day. I reported the two guys they're trying to re-sign out of their 5 or 6 most significant free agents. The two guys they're going to try to re-sign are Chig and Zeitler. And so, transitioning into it is a matter of the personnel. They don't have good personnel for 4-3. So if you're going to change systems, it's time to do it now when you're, not very far along at rebuilding your roster. So that's where I stand on it. I'm sponsored by Edley's Barbecue. They've got restaurants in 12 South, Nolensville, Franklin at the Factory, Franklin and Berry Farms, my home base, Sylvan Park, East Nashville, Donaldson, and Gallatin. You got to get to one of these places. Go this weekend for lunch, or dinner. Go this week for a business lunch. Take the family to dinner on a night when you don't want to cook. It's fantastic food. Also, if you can't get there, let them come to you. Download their app and take advantage of their terrific deal. This is not Grubhub. This is not Uber Eats. This is not DoorDash. Fees have gotten out of control for all of those. Delivery apps will charge you for their service at an exorbitant rate. Edley's wants you to feel like you're in the restaurant. So they want to lower your costs and they want you to be happy with the service. It'll make your barbecue experience as smooth as possible. You get on there, you type in your zip code, they tell you if you're in range. I just listed all of these locations that they have. Odds are you're going to be in range. The delivery is fast. Portions, just like at the restaurant, are big. The food is hot. The delivery fast, cheap. You feel like you're there. As long as the ambiance at home matches the ambiance on the restaurant. Really, really great service provided by Will Newman and all the folks at Edley's. If you can eat there, hospitality is wonderful. They make you feel like you're in their home. And food is spectacular. I'm hooked on the avocado salad, on the burnt ends. But any variety of barbecue you want, the wings are fantastic. Everything's delicious. Eat at Edley's sometime soon. And if you can't make it there, download the app. Let them deliver to you for a very small fee compared to what all the delivery services charge. Edley's Barbecue, the best around. Thank you for indulging. Are you going to take a shot at Alec Pierce? I think they'll take a shot at Alec Pierce if Alec Pierce makes it to free agency. But I think there's a building thinking around the league that the Colts aren't going to let Alec Pierce get away. They're going to do everything they can to re-sign him, and that might include cutting Michael Pittman. And Michael Pittman's a high-quality receiver, too, who will be popular on the open market. Not as popular and not as expensive as Alec Pierce, because Alec Pierce has a different level of speed. Pull from Houston. D'Amico runs Salah's scheme, and they rotate a ton. Rankings settle Junior, Autry, and others. List of names. We can add in Settle Junior, a ranking scheme fit, and pull from a rival. Maybe. We'll see. Sonny Styles numbers. Are the draft nerds catching up to the scouts? Maybe. I mean, he's a terrific player, but again, a super special inside linebacker, off the ball linebacker can be a transformative player, no doubt. But this has been a franchise historically, regime to regime to regime, that has not put a great deal of value on off-the-ball linebackers. Go back to earlier 4-3, Jeff Fisher's 4-3. You had Keith Bullock. I'm thinking more Randall Godfrey, and then later David Thornton. Then you had the David Long. Then you had the Brown, but it's not been Godfrey and Thornton were the two inside off the ball guys who were
terrific other level players, but they've never had, a multi-year all-pro level caliber guy in that spot. Now, it's not to say that Saleh doesn't want that or covet that. Um, you know, he had Fred Warner, who was hurt this last time around. But of all the things the Titans need, I don't know if that's where you start. And so we'll see what they choose to do. Sonny Styles is going to be a hell of a player, but I don't. That wouldn't be where I start. Am I a fan of the new logo changes, the New Jersey? We don't know the New Jersey. So anybody that's talking about the New Jersey is talking about mock-ups, not New Jersey, my home state, but New Jersey, the team's New Jersey. It's got to be careful what we're talking about here. I mean, we've seen the logo. We saw the logo on the plush, which, was blurry. Now we've seen it on a hat, a new era hat. And I confirmed at the combine that is the new primary logo. And that the edges of that, sharp T, the same T that was in the middle of the Fireball logo, are now blunted. They're flattened. It doesn't have a lot of depth to it. That T, it's kind of a flat logo. I think it'll grow on me. If they sell it as a shield, and if it somehow has more depth to it when we see it on a helmet, when we see it on other merchandise, that gives it more room to kind of breathe. We've seen it in two smaller situations where the fabric kind of dictates what it looks like. I also put out a tweet, with it on different color backgrounds that let it, look better, I think. So, we'll get a better understanding of it the more we see it. I'm anxious to hear them explain what the rationale for it was. It still is, a logo that was connected to the batch of logos that they got in 1998, and brought into 1999 when they revealed it and unveiled their original Tennessee Titans uniforms. And so I'm a bit surprised that they didn't. Maybe they went and looked at a bunch of new stuff and decided this was the best. It feels like all they did was said, hey, we like this thing that was really the third mark that didn't make the cut when we went with the flame ball logo and when we went with the sword as our secondary logo when we became the Titans. And we had this too, the flameless ball logo. It was on the floor of our lobby in Metro Center in 1999 to 2020. We just make us, let's make a modest adjustment to it by taking the points off of it and go with that. Was that lazy or somehow inspired? I don't know. So I want to see more of it. In terms of uniforms, we don't know. I mean, the logo hints that it's, and the scuttlebutt has been light blue, Oiler blue, a return to Oiler blue, and they wore Oiler blue as their predominant blue this last season. Light blue and a red accent, Oilers colors. So that's what I'm expecting, but I don't have that confirmed. Tried while I got this confirmed, did not get it confirmed. So we will see. Richard says if that's the logo on the side of the helmet, and it's the primary logo, so I fully expect it on the side of the helmet. I hope it's larger than the Steelers logo, he says. So we'll see. The feedback is very mixed. I mean, the importance of whether it's pointy or blunted to people is very it's very intense. I'm very surprised by it. Caden, going off of Gus Bradley's comments on the two type of edges, is Jermaine Johnson the edge that can go inside or the speedy edge? I think he's the edge that can go inside. I mean, he's pretty big, pretty thick. The speedy edge, I think, is going to have. I mean, it seems harder to find to me. And the speedier edges that are available are not very bendy and twitchy. And I really want a bendy, twitchy guy. Carnell Tate or Arvell Reese at number 4 or bust? Well, I don't think Arvell Reese is going to be there. So I think that if those are your two guys, I think the decision will be made for you before they get there. Spencer read most of my nickel piece. My nickel piece was probably 600 words. Spencer couldn't make it through all 600 words. So that makes me feel bad. And what Saleh looks for. Do I think James Williams makes sense at nickelback, given he's a safety convert and is long and physical? No, I don't think he's instinctive enough. Look, that's counting on a lot from a 7th round pick who was kind of a trait project guy. I think they need to go and get a nickel. Marcus Harris will be in the mix there, but he's not. When he says linebacker, I mean, he certainly would like Nick Emamori, his size, but you're not getting nickel. You're not getting linebacker thickness there because guys with linebacker thickness don't have corner speed. You might be playing more than one there. But a guy, now I dropped the phone. That was my fault. I hope it wasn't too tough on your ears. I like Keontae Scott from Miami. He's got a linebacker mentality at nickel. But Eman Wari is now, in one very good season, become a prototype for a lot of people. Keontae Scott of Miami, intriguing. 2nd, 3rd round. If it could lasted till your 3rd round pick, that'd be great. Corner that I really have come to like is Julian Neal from Arkansas. He's got long arms. He's 6'1", 202. He ran a 4.49. He's got 9.46 RAS. And he was talking very, very, look, corners and receivers, everybody at the combine to a degree, but corners and receivers are going to talk with swagger. But he was just talking about looking at guys across the line of scrimmage and really getting a sense of them. And, can he see fear? Going to look a guy in the eyes and size him up. And if he sees fear, he knows he's got a guy and thinks he can make plays against that guy that can prompt that look of fear. I like the way he talks. I like his tone. I like the tape that I've seen. I tested well, and I think teams like him a lot. There are corners that are, right around 6 feet tall, 189 or above, with RASs, 9 or above. That I think the Titans are going to have some options there. At corner, we talked about Carnell Tate. I think Mekhi Lemon is a pretty attractive guy. He played 75% of his snaps in college in the slot, but he should be more than a slot in the pros. He's an explosive Amon-Ra St. Brown. And, that's an attractive recipe. So he's an explosive dude. He's got some serious swagger too. I think those are the two best receivers in the draft. Jordan Tyson scares me to death. I can't imagine he doesn't scare the Titans to death. Tore up his knee in 2022, broke his collarbone in 2024. persistent hamstring injury in 2025. That's still a concern. He missed over 40% of his team's games in college. The Titans are trying to, be a less injured team. And the way to be a less injured team when you're bringing players in is to not draft guys who have an injury history. Injury history is the biggest way to predict future injuries, to look at past injury. So you just, he's going to be flagged in a big way, if not taken off boards. I would stay away from him in a big way. Another guy, I like, and Pete Prisco, called my attention to him. Not that I wasn't aware of R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. He was great at the podium. He's a smaller guy, but he was talking about mass times acceleration equals force, and he's not that big, but his acceleration of his mass will produce the same force that some of these bigger guys get. He ran out of his cap on his 40, and I think pro day will appeal. I want to tell you about one guy at the combine who, can show you how an outlier can be good or bad. Everything I've read about Danny Dennis Sutton says, he's a backup guy with some potential, has a lot of physical tools, but he's slow to counter. He's got limited bend, kind of plodding almost. He tested great. He had an RAS of 993, and his pressure rate in his last year at Penn State was a little over 17%. So I wish I wrote down who tweeted this, because he deserves full credit. Since 2015, so in the last 10 years, there are 6 guys, 6 defensive linemen who have had a RAS of 993 or better, and a pressure rate in a college season of 17% or better. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Hutchinson in Detroit, Montez Sweat, Malachi Lawrence, who Drew Beatty has written about in his most recent piece that published last night. I retweeted it this morning, who could be an option for the Titans at 35, and Danny Dennis Sutton of Penn State. Now, maybe this translates into something great for him, but he's projected by everybody as being like a backup level guy, maybe, who breaks through, but doesn't really have traits. He lost weight to test. But if you list those guys and presume that Malachi Lawrence is going to become a good pro, he's very much an outlier on that. So does that tell you, hey, take this guy because he's going to wind up being very good? Or, wow, this guy did a really good job testing to match that pressure rate, which people don't think is going to translate into him being a very good pro. I would take a look at that. I would consider that. Let's see what you guys are up to over here. Yeah, Richard, I'm not giving that guy any attention. Spencer says Styles has one less sack when lining up at edge as Reese with a similar snap count. Why can't Styles transition too? Just because he's already so good at inside linebacker? Yeah, I think he's a supremely good inside linebacker. And so, with Reese, you say, well, he has the trait to be an edge rusher. And so the value makes him an edge rusher. But you look at Styles and you say that guy is a off the ball linebacker who's a terror. Now he's an off the ball linebacker who occasionally goes to edge as part of his versatility to screw with people and to complicate matchups. He's not a guy who can play either spot per se, I don't think you would ever take him and make him an edge because he's so good where he starts. Whereas Reese has played probably 60-40. It's just not the same. No, I don't think the RAS Len Kaz is asking, is it the most accurate rating when projecting the NFL potential? It's a reflection of athleticism. And you want I mean, it's a true measure of athleticism, and you certainly need athleticism in players. I don't understand. CRA says this idea of basing the Ridley decision on free agent signings. Why not keep Rid, restructure if we can, still sign a guy and still draft a guy at 35 and still have DK and IO Manor? Well, I mean, you certainly want a good pool, but if you say you sign Romeo Dobbs and you draft one in the first or second round, you would want both of those, and you have DK and the IO Manor, and you have Ridley. I mean, that's a nice pool of 5. But you think Calvin Ridley's going to be happy if he's 5th there or 4th? He's not. So you need to avoid that. I mean, yeah, he's got to do what you ask him to do, but he expects to be, in the top 3 for sure. And so I know you've got control of him. I mean, he's on the team unless you tell him he's not on the team. But I think there's got to be somewhat delicate and realistic as you determine what to do there. So the coach says Titans missed their trade back opportunity last year. Need to take one of those hard to find guys at 4 this year. Well, I mean, if they traded back last year, who's their quarterback right now? Kenneth Goit thinks I'm going to offer a complete recap of the whole thing because he joined late. Kenneth, I would say, like, you could watch from when you came in to the end, and then you can go watch from the beginning until when you came in. Please don't draft anyone with a lot of injuries. Has that mentality changed? I certainly think it has. Look, in terms of keeping Ridley, I think you got to make a decision on Ridley before the start of the league year, which is March 11th. So I think you're gauging what you think is going to happen in the free agent market, but it's not like you can make your free agent decisions and see who you get and then decide on Ridley. That's not fair to the guy. You've got to give him, if he's not going to be here, a chance to go be part of that free agent market and get jobs. So, but they're not decided at this point. I mean, they may be leaning, but yeah. Keontae Scott, Bustin' Diamond says, plays any position you want him to in the secondary. I have a certain feeling about this versatility. It's great that a guy can play anywhere you want him to in the secondary, but you have to start it. He's got to have a position to start with. He could play corner, he could play safety, he could play nickel, he could play dime, inside, outside, all of that. But what's his position at the beginning? I think for the Titans, he would be a nickel from the start. All right. So he's a nickel at the start. Now, what's the benefit of his versatility from there? It's mostly injury based. Well, if our outside corner gets hurt and we don't have a good backup outside corner, we move him there. If we're thin at safety, we move him there. But he's versatile. And that's terrific. But if he's your nickel back, what's the giant benefit of his versatility? That he can cover a lot of different people. So if he's a nickel back and he can cover a scat back running back in the slot, and he can cover a big tight end in the slot, that's fantastic. You don't have to worry about your nickel not being able to handle whoever it is that lines up in the slot. You can cover the gamut from a small, sneaky, shifty guy to any kind of wide receiver to a big, bulky tight end. All right. So I love that versatility. It's all out of the same position. But I think versatility sometimes gets oversold. If like versatility is your whole thing, if you're Isaiah Simmons, he's so versatile. Got to have him because he's so versatile. And then what does he do? Look, they would love to trade down. Who's trading up? I think that it's 8%, 8% chance of trading down. I don't think anybody's. Who are you coming up for? Maybe somebody's coming up for one of those defensive linemen that you want, and you end up at 8 or 10, and at 8 or 10, maybe you get Love, maybe you get Tate, maybe you get Lemon. They like Femi in this system. Saleh talked about scouting him at in San Francisco as a 4-3 hand in the dirt end. And so what's happened to Femi is his responsibilities have shrunk and shrunk. So in college, he was off the ball linebacker at UCLA until his final 10 games where they turned him into an edge. So his responsibilities went from more expansive off the ball to narrower on the line of scrimmage, but as an outside linebacker, still with some coverage responsibilities. Now those are gone, and he's strictly a go get the quarterback guy. Now, I don't think Femi is an unintelligent football player, but the path that he's taken now positionally from UCLA to Titans 1, now to Titans 2 is less and less responsibility and more focus on going and getting the quarterback. And hopefully that's good for his game. You cannot plan like this, Dustin says. I'd rather build through the trenches and trade for Love in 2 years when we're ready. Oh, well, I agree with you thematically. I've said that. Make do with what you've got or with free agent running backs for now. And when you've built all of this stuff, then in 2 years, you're in position to draft the Love, or whoever, and get back to being the Eddie, Chris Johnson, Derrick Henry team that's got a foundational running back. But in the meantime, you can make it work without having, a first or second round running back. Yeah, I said earlier, Shaker's asking, are the Titans going free agency or drafting the next center and right guard? They will shop hard for the next center in free agency, and they're trying to re-sign Kevin Zeitler at right guard. Thank you for not reading. I've written about Titans trying to re-sign Chigakonkwo, and written about the Titans trying to re-sign Kevin Zeitler. Those are their top two targets for free agency amongst their own people. For less than a cup of coffee or a beer or a cocktail, you get all my Titans coverage, plus Mike Herndon's analytics, Drew Beatty's film study, Braden Gall on the draft, Blake Bedingfield post-game. It's also the best way to support Titans independent journalism. Give me a shot. If you're here and liking this, there's more and more of it at the site. Easy link in the comments here for you to head over and sign up. Lots going on Reels too. A lot of you have mentioned Reels, so check those out. Let's get back to your newest questions here. If you're listening after the fact on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeart, please like, rate, and review. It helps the cause. If you are here on YouTube, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. And same thing, if you're on the Facebook page, please subscribe. If you are on Twitter, be sure to subscribe and give a heart. All of those things help the cause in the big picture, and I appreciate it. Devin asks, says the Titans don't need to re-sign Chig unless it's a one-year prove-it deal. Don't tie up any future money on a player of Chig's caliber. Well, I mean, I think Chig would say, after his first contract, he's proven what he is. And I think we know what he is. I mean, he's not going to become a big run blocking tight end. He could get better at it, but he's not going to be big at it. I would go to this plan B and get somebody who's much better in line. I like Kolar, but likely Kolar, or who's the other one I said? I think Bellinger. I think the Titans could maybe be a better team with those guys, particularly if you're doing a better job of throwing the ball to Pollard and Spears, particularly if you do better at wide receiver, getting targets, and let them be some yak guys as opposed to Chig. I think the market's fallen in love with Chig too much because the team hasn't had good yak guys. And because you see Chig running with the ball in his hands and you look at that and go, wow, that looks really good. And you don't notice so much when he's getting blown up on run plays, which happens all too frequently. When I lived in Houston for a year, I lived in a really shitty apartment on Richmond, down the street from Sam's Boat. And visiting is nothing special. I drive a little sentimentally past, closer to the highway. My girlfriend lived closer to the highway in a much nicer area. So I remember some good times over in that neighborhood over by the Galleria, but it was only a year. I did go once back to the Oilers facility area to see what it was. I can't remember what it was, but told some stories to the old Titans folks that dated back that far. There are very few anymore, if any. The coach B says, I think there'll be a really good running back available in the fourth. Maybe. Look, I want them to be better at running back. I think they may think that Pollard, a combination of Pollard, Spears, Mullings, combined with a more open offense that results from having a better passing game with better receivers, better protection, and a better run blocking line will be sufficient there. They did run the ball much better later in the year. I think part of that was Luke Stocker taking some ownership in the run blocking scheme, which I think will be better overall with Dayball, with Priscillo, with Stocker still involved. So there's a great beach bar, Irish beach bar in Jacksonville Beach. Somebody's asking me about my Jacksonville spots. I wish I could remember it. Irish Beach Bar, Jacksonville Beach. You won't miss it. I mean, this is kind of a silly stance, Kenneth. No offense. He says, outside of Barkley, Dayball hasn't had really good running backs. Will he truly care about the running back too much? Because he didn't have them didn't mean he didn't want them. I mean, you could say Brian Callahan never had good receivers. Did he care about good receivers? Brian Callahan hated that he didn't have good receivers. Mike Vrabel, after A.J. Brown, didn't have good receivers. Did he really care about wide receivers? Of course. Just wasn't given good receivers. What else we got? We'll take a couple more and we'll give it a wrap and get into our Saturdays. I appreciate your presence. and participation. Rob says ESPN keeps putting Love's numbers next to Pollard's. I mean, it's kind of silly to put somebody's college numbers on a college team that has good success and doesn't play tough opponents next to somebody's pro numbers on a team that's struggling and had a bad offensive line and bad production until the last 5 games of the season. That's not apples to apples. And somebody's talking about the quality of class. The top 10 is definitely not good. The top 10 is not very good. I mean, this is the question. Demetrius is asking, is Jeremiah Love a top 5 pick? If I was Borgonzi, would I pick him over the edge of the wideout? I probably would not. I don't have as good a feel of Jeremiah Love as they do. I think if you consider him, a blue chip prospect, and none of those other guys are, then you take him. But is he that? And this debate about this top 10 to me is very interesting about how do you value Jeremiah Love at a position with a short shelf life, one contract player oftentimes, and who, can be very good, but not have as big a bearing on wins and losses. Same with Caleb Downs, who can be an excellent safety, but that kind of excellent safety doesn't necessarily translate to wins and losses the way a dynamic and effective pass rusher does, or even a corner who shuts down half of the field, or potentially a top wide receiver. And so at what point does the comparative value of that guy swing you to take him instead of the guys at those other more premium positions? I think that's really the question that we're going to get an answer to at the end of April as we see what happens here. Richard says, do I think constantly transferring in college is hurting some of these guys as far as good coaching goes? I ask because a lot of these guys are testing well, but scouts say this class is lacking. Well, testing well doesn't mean that much. Testing well tests your athleticism and your ability to prepare to be tested, but it doesn't mean anything about your football playing. So the tape tells you about the football playing. Dan Campbell told me at the combine when I said, does anything overrule the tape? He said, nothing overrules the tape. And if you don't have the tape, then no reason that you're looking at anything else. And repeatedly, coaches said, including Borgonzi said there used to be a flag color for a transfer on draft boards in Kansas City, that it was a concern if a guy transferred. You had to look at why did he leave and what were the circumstances. And now Cam was a great example of it last year. They saw Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami as a strength of his. He went to 3 different locker rooms and won those guys over and became popular with them and learned the playbooks and played well. So he came into the Titans. They knew that he would do fine in the locker room, and they knew he could learn another playbook. He had proven those things to them already. And I talked to other GMs and players at the combine about that. It's not looked at. I mean, some guys it's unfavorable. Why did you transfer still? If it's because I couldn't get along with people, I couldn't learn things, that's a bad thing. But mostly, if you're climbing the ladder, it's looked at as a good thing if you continue to play well on your way. Now, there are occasions where, particularly with offensive linemen, one of the GMs said, if you keep moving around, you never really learn a thing, and that's a bad thing. But more often than not, no, it's not a strike against the guy. It's not. I'll maybe take one or two more. We'll get out of here. The Coach B says, I don't know how Mendoza, Reese, Bain, Bailey, etc. can be considered weak. What's the standard? Well, Mendoza's very good. That's one pick. It's one quarterback. A usual draft has 2 or 3 quarterbacks who are considered, potential franchise changers. Reese hasn't played as a end or edge player enough that he's not considered a guy who's in transition. So there's still some question marks about that. Bain has short arms, so he doesn't have length, and length is considered a hugely valuable key piece of a great pass rusher's physical characteristics. And Bailey said himself he needs to work on defending the run. Usually if you're drafting a guy in the top 6, he doesn't carry one of those question marks. Myles Garrett doesn't have those question marks. Adrian Hutchinson didn't have a lot of those question marks, did he? These are the kind of guys you want to get in the top 5. Garrett's a super extreme on the other end, right? But think about the prime guys. Last year, when the Giants drafted Abdul Carter, were there questions like that about him? I don't think so. So that's the standard. That's the standard. Cam asks, if I get to make the pick, what am I doing? I'm not ready to make the pick. I'm not ready to make the pick. I'm Reese or Bailey right now, I think. So we'll see. Short arms or not, Len says the tape is the tape. And that's true. But I think the Titans in that player ideally would like somebody that could kick out wide 9. And Reuben Bain is not Javon Curse. You could put him 7, which is, outside the tight end, but not like angularly outside the tight end. But you want a long, bendy guy. And Reuben Bain is a good defensive lineman. But he's a guy that could ultimately kick inside. Now, if Javon Curse was coming inside, it was like as a changeup to surprise people. It wasn't because his body type told you to put him in there. So the kind of guy I want, the long, I like kind of undersized and sleek. Undersized and sleek isn't maybe such a thing anymore. Yeah, Reuben Bain, as JFK 5149 is pointing out, didn't work out. So there's a lot that goes into his pro day. He's got to show off what he is to reinforce the tape. The tape is the tape, and he peaked at the end of the season and all of that. But it's universal. This top 10 is not great. And it's not just a quarterback bias. Is Carnell Tate, Jackson Smith, and Jigba? No, he's not. Is the best, name another player. Who's the top 6, top 7 worthy cornerback in this draft? The best, there are good cornerbacks in this draft, but the top 3 cornerbacks, I don't think tempt teams to take them as high as we see the highest cornerback go in other years. So I don't think so. Hey, I appreciate you guys being here. Retweet this if you will. And have a good rest of the weekend. Don't block the box, and be sure, please, to lock your locks.